We're ranking the top 10 rides in Fårup Sommerland. Let's fucking go! I've been thinking about getting back into videos, and I kind of just wanted to make a top 10 of all the parks I've been to. This is definitely not at all a concept I stole from Villas, I promise. And if you think so, Villas, you can bite me. I visited Fårup Sommerland just last year in 2020. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even write all the rides that are on my top 10, so some of them are like memories back from 2015. But it doesn't matter. I thought this was a good one to start off with. I visited Legoland like 2 days ago. What? Let's fucking go! This ride is one of those I didn't write last year, but I mean, it's pretty alright. You know, it's your classic Berg-and-Talbahn, where you just get thrown around in a freaking circle for 45 hours and you get pushed out to the side by heavy-ass laterals. They really like their Sierra flat rides in Fårup Sommerland, and this is one of those typical family ones that most parks have. I'm gonna be honest, I kind of like these. Some of them aren't that good. I hate this thing. But I just remember really liking this when I was younger, and that's why it just sits up here. Also because this park has some really killer rides, but only a few, and then it gets kind of sad from there. So this is their new wave swinger, or their new Sierra Wegenfleger. And it's basically the one that replaced the old one, which was just called Wave Swinger. But this is, of course, Nødsvinger, which is the nut swinger. And basically, you know, it's alright. It's pretty good when it goes forwards, or it's at least solid. But my problem with it is that it also goes backwards, and I'm gonna be honest, no, I don't like that. It's not because it's uncomfortable or anything, it's actually kind of fun, but the thing about it is, it all goes, so for some reason gets me a bit nauseous, because if you know me, I suffer a bit from motion sickness, and that kind of sucks dicks, you know? It's super intense. For some reason, going backwards just triggers that, apparently, I found out. So I remember this as a boring, rough, pain in the ass roller coaster until I went back last year, and I found out it wasn't that. It was just boring. The thing about Minexplassen is it's actually not a bad coaster at all. It does nothing bad per se. It's not rough, it's actually fairly smooth. Even though it has those shitty Vekoma Jr. coaster transitions, it actually does it all pretty smoothly, pretty sleek, but it just also doesn't do anything interesting throughout the layout whatsoever. It's still a roller coaster though, which somehow just makes it more fun for me, but it sits firmly at number 8. Okay, so this ride, this Reverchon spinning coaster, this French piece of shit. This is an interesting one. I remember this as being a typical kind of rough wild mouse spinning coaster that got me really nauseous. And it wasn't the last thing. So when I wrote this, you know, it starts out as a normal wild mouse coaster, and it's pretty solid there. It's actually pretty solid. And then as soon as it starts spinning, and note, this was just me and my little sister in this car, and we don't weigh a whole lot. That thing spun so freaking fast, my dudes. It's actually one of the most insane experiences I can remember on a roller coaster, because it's just spun so freaking fast, and when it goes through those tight hairpins with the speed that it does while it spins so freaking fast, it's just insane. It was kind of painful, but it was also just so hilarious, and the weirdest thing is I didn't even get nauseous, because I thought because even though it was insane, in really not the best way, it was also just hilarious and just a really fun experience, but also terrifying at the same time. And that's why this spinning coaster is actually one of the ones I kind of like in a way, but I'm still not sure where to put it in my roller coaster rankings. I don't know how often a ride like that is gonna happen. This flume ride is pretty solid. It's got 3 drops, and the smaller the drop is, the more you get wet. It's got some theming, but it's pretty weak. It really doesn't have a lot of it going on. In fact, its most interesting piece of theming, it's a big ass sign with a million pieces of gum on it. This is cancer. But it's still a pretty solid flume, you know, it gets you wet. Nice. It certainly is fun to ride. That's really just all it is. There's not a lot to say. It's a flume, it's got a lot of drops. It does what it's supposed to do. Sailing. Okay, so this is their new 2020 roller coaster. And it's also my first ever boomerang. A family boomerang. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty solid. Obviously, I can't compare it to any other boomerangs or family boomerangs, but I can compare it as a family coaster. And the thing is, the first drop going through the station is actually pretty alright, and then it's got its 3 somewhat twisted airtime hills, which don't really grant any airtime. There are also some fun laterals, actually, and then obviously the last big-ass spike is also pretty fun. It's a solid roller coaster, but it's not really anything special.
This is cute.
It's definitely a family coaster with a fun concept. Fits in pretty well in Denmark. And you know, for what it's trying to be, it's not bad. It's pretty good.
Oh, fasting.
Okay, so we're taking a huge freaking leap here from 5th position to 4th position because Fårup rafting is, without a doubt, in my opinion, the best rafting in Denmark. It's made from Bear Rides AG, and it's a classic rapids ride, and it just does everything so freaking solid, right? The location is great, with amazing atmosphere out in the forest. It goes super fast. It has really fun waves and knocks in everything all the time. The funny thing is, it's not one of those where you're constantly getting super close, but it constantly has you on the brink of your seat because you constantly think you're gonna get super wet until you just end up laughing it off like a psychopath. And of course, the theming is great as well. It's just really good rafting overall. It might be my second favorite rafting. It certainly doesn't come anywhere near fjord rafting in Europa Park, but it's just a really good rafting. It does exactly what it's supposed to. It does nothing bad at all. The only way to make it better is just to add a bunch of extra on top of. Even more insane waves or machinery or theming or whatnot. Stuff like fjord rafting and probably stuff like they do in Fantasyland.
Okay.
At number 3, we have the infamous Orkanen, which is the Vekoma suspended family coaster that's a bit more intense than the typical one.
Damn, boy!
It's a 453 model, which basically means it has this overbank that has everyone crazy because apparently to some it goes upside down. But the thing about this coaster is, besides being pretty solid smooth, it's also just a super fun coaster. It's at a fun location and it's got some fun forces. The helixes are fun, nothing is super intense, it's just all around decent, just slightly more intense than the average family coaster, and again, it's pretty fun. There are definitely more intense family coasters in Denmark, without a doubt, like Polar Explorer, Mine Train Ulven, but it just does everything really well, and the fact that it's a suspended coaster and not just a normal invert means that it also tilts a little bit, and that just makes it a little more fun with its soothing back and forth. It's almost like when you drift a car perfectly around a corner. It's just super fun. There's not really a lot to add on this coaster. Again, it's just all around really good and really fun to ride, especially in the front for some reason, again, because it just feels like you're freaking flying. I definitely understand why Dollywood has one of these as well, especially because the US just also really needed a good version of these, as far as I understand. You can't say it's excellent in any way, but you just really want to ride it and you just really have fun on it.
That is true.
Number 1 and number 2 are incredibly close for me. I've chosen at number 2 comes the SNS wooden roller coaster Falcon. This is only one of a few of the SNS wooden coasters, and it's fantastic. I didn't remember how this was at all from 6 years ago, but I can say now I know exactly how this ride feels. When you go over the back, you start out with this amazing first drop that just pulls you over like there's no tomorrow, and it gives amazing airtime. And then everything from there is just really freaking solid. But if you sit in the front, right, sure, the first drop is only gonna give a mild ejector pop, and that's about it. But the rest of the hills are gonna give pretty solid, sustained ejector airtime. At least by my standards, which I know aren't the highest. You really stay out of your seat for at least a second or two over a lot of them hills, and it just keeps going because it's hill, turn, turn, whatever. That's also one of the things. These turns, you want to be careful with where you sit. At least for me, I felt like I had to sit on the left side because the restraint has a thing going down in the middle, and this coaster is super freaking rough, alright? This thing hurts on the right side because of how your thigh hits onto the left side into the restraint. If you sit in the right space, or if you're the right build, if you're not built different like I am, then it's gonna be a super amazing ride, and it really is one of my favorite wooden coasters, as in it's still like my number 3 Woody out of 5. This thing just has cracking airtime. It really feels like a true Woody. It's still fun in the turns as well, and it just feels overall intense. Finally, at number 1 is the Gerstlauer launch coaster, only one of 2 in the world. It's just amazing. This ride is just really freaking solid. It's basically like a Gerstlauer Infinity coaster, like Karacho, but it's just older and it has this different 6-seater car. It has a pretty solid LSM launch that isn't anything spectacular, but it certainly still packs a punch. It has a great top hat. It has really strong airtime after that, and then it goes on to 2 super fun inversions, including what I actually think is the best inversion in Denmark. It's Corkscrew. The thing about Lune is it's separated into 3 parts. You have the first part with the launch and airtime, and you have the second part with inversions, and the third part which is just turns. There's a lot of complaints about this being rough as shit, but for me there was only really 2 rough spots, and besides that, I mean, it's an intense coaster for Danish standards. It packs a punch, it does everything it's supposed to be. It's a big package in one. It just freaking slaps. That sums up the first top 10 of this series. So guys, let me know which part I should do my next top 10 on, except for Legoland though, because I'm gonna be honest, I really want to go back later this year and ride a lot more rides that I did not ride the other day, and that's just gonna give me a much better top 10. So is it gonna be Jurors or Europa Park or Tivoli Gardens, Gardaland?
Pizza time.
I'll let you know if I haven't been there. Otherwise guys, I hope you have a great freaking time, and remember that pineapple on pizza is wrong.